Should you pay back student loans? I'm going to share with you my top 5 suggestions with how to deal with student loans. Coming up. Hi everyone, this is Ernesto from AttaBoyCowBoy, and on this channel we share investment tips to help you deal with everyday financial situations, to help you make the best choices. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. I get asked this question a lot. Should I pay back my student loans? 'Cause a lot of us have student loans and we're not sure what to do because it kind of feels like it's a dead weight or a backpack full of lead. And you're just not sure how to deal with it. But there's a lot of things to consider. The most important thing is inflation, and inflation is actually one of my favorite topics. So I'm going to give you some examples. I had a student loan that was charging me 4.5% interest, okay? So it sounds like a lot, but actually the way you got to look at it is you get the student loan number, 4.5% the interest rate, and you subtract the inflation for that year. Here in the United States, currently it's 2% this year, but normally it's around 3%. So we'll say it's 3%. That's about the average, okay? So 4.5% interest minus 3% equals 1.5%. And then in the US, you could deduct the interest on student loan debt. So it's about 1/3. 1/3 of 4.5% is 1.5%. So if you subtract the 3% inflation and the 1.5% tax deduction you're going to get from the 4.5, your real interest rate is going to be 0. So if you're wondering, should I pay it back? I would say no. That's a 0 interest percent, right? So let's say your interest rate is 5% or 6%, and it's the same deduction and the same inflation. If it's 6%, you subtract 3% for inflation, so that brings your student loan debt interest rate down to 3%, and then you get 1/3 of the 6%, which is 2%. So you're gonna get the 6%, you're gonna subtract the 2%, which makes it 4, and then you're gonna subtract the 3% inflation. So your real interest rate is gonna be 1%. So it's not really worth paying back if they're only charging you 1%, right? So what is inflation? Let me explain that a little more in detail because we hear that often. Inflation is the gradual increase in prices. Let's say in your bank account you have $1,000 in your bank account, right? At the end of the year, you're gonna subtract 3%. You're still gonna see that number, 1,000, but the purchasing power, the ability to buy things, is going to be reduced by 3%. So on $1,000, it's going to go down $30. It's going to go down to $970. So even though you're going to look at your bank account and you're still going to see 1,000, the actual amount of goods you can buy with it will be 970. Okay? So that is decreasing your purchasing power every year. That's why saving cash anywhere in the world is one of the worst things you could do. Do not save cash. Invest it or use it to pay down some type of debt because you're losing money on it. It's devaluing every year. Other countries like Mexico, Colombia, they're averaging around 10% inflation a year. So if you had $1,000 in Mexican currency or Colombian currency, at the end of the year, it would be worth 900. So it'll devalue by that amount every year. So you definitely don't want to do that. Another way that you can see it is if you look at things that you buy every day. Like let's talk about a Coke. Coca-Cola used to be 5 cents forever. And now you can't buy them for 5 cents. Now they're like $1. Or if you look at old McDonald's signs, they'll show hamburgers for 10 cents, cheeseburgers for 15 cents. You know, now they're like a couple dollars each or whatever. That's inflation creeping up. Retailers have to increase the price every year of goods to make up for the loss that they're getting from inflation, okay? So let's say I'm selling these almonds here, and I'm a California almond producer. This almond bag costs $10. At the end of the year, because of inflation, I'm gonna lose 3%. The prices went up 3%. So I'm gonna have to raise the price from $10 to $10.30. All right? So you don't exactly see people selling almonds or hamburgers or sodas or whatever, raising them by 30 cents every year, or 20 cents, or whatever the inflation rate might be that year. What they'll do is they'll do chunks at a time. They'll go maybe from $10 to $10.50 or $10 to $10.99, and they'll try to make it up for like the next 2 or 3 years, anticipating that's what the inflation might be. In other countries where inflation is a lot higher, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see prices going up almost daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, depending on how much inflation they have. Sometimes retailers in the US, they'll try to suck up the cost by increasing the price every 2 or 3 years, or what they'll do is they'll cut portion sizes. You might notice some of the things you buy, like ice cream. I remember growing up, an ice cream was always a gallon. It's not a gallon anymore. If you go look, it's reduced down, and every year they cut it down. So instead of changing the price, they cut the quantity of the goods they're giving you. That way they can cut their costs to help make up for inflation. Now, what is causing prices to go up? Well, I have a job, you have a job, probably. So your job, you're gonna ask for a raise. Every time you get a raise, somebody has to pay for that. So whatever it is your company is producing, they're gonna have to raise their prices. So let's say your company uses electricity or natural gas or water. All the employees that work in those places all want raises also. They're gonna ask for raises, so all the utility rates are gonna go up. So let's say I'm making houses. If I'm making houses, all the employees are gonna ask for raises. That's gonna cause price to go up. All the wood I buy to build this house, the employees that make that wood are gonna ask for raises. That's gonna cause that to go up. Let's say I use gas to run the motors, to run the chainsaws, to run the equipment, to run the bulldozers to build this house. That gasoline is gonna go up for the same reasons, because all the inputs, which are utilities, food, electricity, gas, whatever, it's gonna go up, and so are wages. So that slowly creeps into things. It causes the price of goods to go up, and other people have to raise the price to make up for it. When it comes to currency, this is it. It's $1,000, or it's $10, or it's $100, or whatever it might be. So this can't really change, but the value of it is gonna change. The real purchasing power. I could have bought a house for $1,000 100 years ago. When Babe Ruth was a baseball player, you could have, but now you can't. I can't even buy, I don't know, I could buy a few windows for a house, maybe a front door, that's about it. So that's the gradual increase in prices. Okay, number 2, pay back other forms of debt. So if you have some money, let's say you have an extra $1,000 or $500, and you're wondering whether or not to pay back the student debt, and you just did your inflation calculation and you figured out you're paying 1% or 0%, or in my case, I had some student loans that were only charging me 3%, so I was actually making 1% on them. You decide that's not your best investment, because we have limited resources. We have a limited amount of money to spend. So you want to make sure you're putting it into the most efficient place, right? You want to make the most out of it. So if I'm paying 0% of my student loan debt, I don't want to necessarily use my money to pay that back. I'm going to pay back other forms of debt. I'm going to look if I have any credit cards. That's going to be number 1, because those are usually around 20%. If I have any kind of loans, like car loans or personal loans or anything like that, all those should be your first priority. Student loans should be dead last, because they're usually the lowest interest rate and you can get a tax deduction for them. So those are your last resort. So use them to pay other forms of higher interest debt first. Number 3, fund your retirement accounts. If I have an extra $1,000 and I'm wondering whether or not to pay this towards student debt or put it into a retirement account, definitely put it into a retirement account. Retirement accounts average around 10% returns. So you want to get this $1,000 and put it in there, because at the end of the year you're going to have $1,100. You're going to make $100. If you put it into your student loan and you're paying 0%, you're going to make nothing. Or if you're making 1%, then you're going to make 10 bucks on it. I think you'd rather have $100 than $10, right? So put it into your retirement accounts. Plus, there's another bonus. The government gives you a 30% tax incentive to invest in retirement accounts. So if you put this $1,000, you're automatically going to be able to save yourself $300 in taxes. So you're going to make the $300, and you're going to make the $100. It's going to go up. So at the end of the year, this $1,000 can actually become $1,400. Over here, you're going to save yourself 10 bucks. It's not a good deal. So definitely invest in your retirement accounts before you pay student loan debt. If you don't have any set up an IRA, number one, and then number two, set up either a 401k or a 403b, depending on what your work offers. If you're self-employed, you can do other ones, other self-employed retirement accounts. Definitely look into that as one of your options of where to put your money first. Number four, if you're trying to figure out what to do with your student loans, just keep this in mind. Student loans are considered good debt. So if you're trying to get mortgage loans or car loans or business loans or whatever else you're trying to get, those are considered good debt. So they're not actually seen as being used by someone that has self-discipline. If you have credit card debt or consumer debt, then that doesn't bode as well for you, because that looks like someone that's probably spending more than they can afford. But creditors, when they see student loan debt, they don't look on it negatively. It's actually seen as an asset, because you're someone that invested in human capital, which means you increased your earning potential by investing in that schooling. So it's actually seen positively. The other thing is that student loan debt, if you make your payments on time, which you absolutely should, shows up on your credit report. So it's going to help boost your credit score, and it's going to give you positive credit history. So it's going to help you get more loans and help you do more business in the future. Okay, so the fifth reason why you might want to, and probably the only reason you want to try to pay off your student loan, is if you're trying to get a mortgage or you're trying to get some other type of loan that you really need for a business or something. Let's say you're making $1,000 a month and your rent is $500 a month. Your car, your food, your clothing, everything else is $300. So at the end of the month, you're left with $200, right? If you're trying to get a loan and the bank is saying, okay, we want you to have at least $200 clear a month to give you this mortgage loan for the house, then you're gonna be okay. But let's say you have a student loan, and that student loan is $50 a month of payment. That's gonna drop your available payment down to $150. So banks look at debt to income ratios. They get your salary, like let's say $1,000 a month, and they have you subtract all your liabilities or all the things that you have to pay every month, and whatever you have left over is what they figure that you're gonna have to pay a mortgage. So if that number is reduced down to $150 and you need $200 to get that house, then it would make sense to pay off that student loan, just so that you can clear up that money and have more available for a payment every month. So that's probably the only reason I can think of off the top of my head that you would want to pay off a student loan. If you have any other questions, please write in the comments section. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you.